I've always said that I wish they had communicated to me a little better about the Montreal deal. Maybe we could have done something differently.
That was WWE legend The Undertaker speaking about just how messed up the situation between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels became after their final match in Montreal, and he's far from the only one who thinks that way. But what ignited this strange animosity between two of the greatest to ever step into the ring? Let's dive in. To understand the foundation of their legendary rivalry, we need to go back to the early days when Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels weren't bitter enemies but contemporaries climbing the wrestling ladder together in an industry that was rapidly evolving around them. Bret Hart was born on July 2, 1957, in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, into what can only be described as wrestling royalty, with a Hart name carrying immense weight in the professional wrestling world, and young Bret growing up immersed in the business in ways most could never imagine. His father, Stu Hart, ran Stampede Wrestling, a promotion that served as a proving ground for countless wrestlers who would go on to achieve legendary status, and perhaps even more crucially, Stu's home training facility, the now famous Hart Dungeon, became notorious for producing some of the most technically skilled wrestlers the industry has ever seen. The training in the Hart Dungeon was notoriously brutal, with Stu Hart stretching aspiring wrestlers into submission holds that tested not only their physical limits but their mental resilience, and many who entered that basement gym never returned, unable to endure the painful reality of what real wrestling training demanded. But for Bret, this was simply his childhood, his normal, and his destined path to follow in his father's footsteps. He debuted professionally in 1978 with Stampede Wrestling, where he captured multiple championships, including 6 North American heavyweight titles, honing the fundamentals that would later define his signature style and earn him the moniker, the Excellence of Execution. In 1984, Bret made the leap to the World Wrestling Federation, initially working mid-card matches until his trajectory changed dramatically when he teamed with Jim, the Anvil, Neidhart to form the Hart Foundation, managed by the legendary Jimmy Hart. The Hart Foundation captured the WWF Tag Team Championship twice, first in 1987, then again in 1990, establishing Bret as far more than just another wrestler trading on his famous family name. Night after night, city after city, he proved his mastery of ring psychology and technical wrestling, earning recognition from fans and peers alike, who knew that when Bret Hart stepped into the ring, something exceptional was about to happen. Meanwhile, on a completely different path, Shawn Michaels, born Michael Shawn Hickenbottom on July 22, 1965, in Chandler, Arizona, was forging his own route to wrestling stardom. Michaels entered the wrestling world in 1984 after training under veteran Jose Laron, who recognized the raw potential in this young, athletic performer whose moves seemed to defy gravity. He gained valuable early experience working in various wrestling territories, a common path at the time before the WWF's national expansion effectively ended the territory system. Michaels competed in Mid-South Wrestling and the American Wrestling Association, AWA, where he teamed with Marty Jannetty to form the Midnight Rockers. The duo captured the AWA World Tag Team Championship twice, earning a reputation as one of the most exciting tag teams in the business with their high-energy, fast-paced style, which contrasted sharply with the power-based teams dominating wrestling at the time. In 1988, Michaels and Jannetty signed with the WWF, where they were rebranded simply as the Rockers. Their aerial attacks and synchronized offense quickly made them fan favorites, and they engaged in memorable feuds with several teams, most notably the Hart Foundation. From 1989 to 1991, the Rockers and the Hart Foundation frequently clashed in house shows and television matches, highlighting not only the stylistic differences between the two teams, but also how well they complemented each other in the ring. It was during these early encounters that the seeds of what would later become one of wrestling's most intense personal rivalries were unknowingly planted. Their first televised singles match took place on February 11, 1990, on WWF Wrestling Challenge, ending in a double countout that left fans eager for more, while highlighting Hart's methodical ground-based style against Michaels' innovative, high-flying approach. At this point in their careers, there was no animosity between them. In fact, the opposite was true. Bret would later recall in interviews that he respected Michaels and Jannetty as skilled workers, a wrestling term for performers who understood the craft and could be trusted to deliver quality matches consistently. They viewed each other as peers rather than rivals. Both were undersized in an era still dominated by larger-than-life figures like Hulk Hogan, the Ultimate Warrior, and other superhero-type characters, and this shared experience of being smaller, more technically oriented wrestlers striving to prove their worth at the top of the card created a bond. In those early years, both men harbored similar ambitions. They wanted to main event WrestleMania, they wanted to hold the WWF Championship, and they wanted to show that workers of their size and style could carry the company just as effectively as the giants who had dominated the previous decade. For a time, It seemed entirely possible that they could achieve those goals while maintaining professional respect for one another. As the 1990s progressed and both men climbed toward the top of the card, the dynamics between them began to shift in ways neither could have predicted. Professional jealousy started to emerge, and backstage politics grew increasingly prevalent. The contrast between them couldn't have been more striking. Bret Hart was the consummate professional, always punctual, in peak physical condition despite the grueling schedule, abstaining from substance abuse, and treating the business with deep respect. Shawn Michaels, by his own later admission, was struggling during this period, battling substance abuse, gaining a reputation for being difficult to work with, and embracing a bad boy persona both on-screen and off. These personality differences, combined with the natural competition between two men aiming for the same spot at the top, created friction that gradually escalated from professional tension into something far more personal and far uglier. By 1992, both Hart and Michaels had successfully shed their tag team identities and were positioning themselves as the future of the WWF. During this transitional period, known as the New Generation era, the company was moving away from the cartoonish, larger-than-life Hulkamania era toward performers who were more grounded, athletic, and focused on in-ring excellence rather than pure spectacle. Michaels had fully embraced his new Heartbreak Kid persona, a cocky, arrogant heel managed by the legendary Sensational Sherry, strutting to the ring with supreme confidence, posing for cameras, and treating opponents with obvious disdain. The character was perfect for Michaels, allowing his natural charisma to shine while giving him the freedom to be outrageous and flamboyant. Hart, meanwhile, embodied the honorable babyface champion, a wrestler's wrestler who let his in-ring work speak for itself, representing everything good and pure about professional wrestling. Hard work, dedication, respect for the business, and an unwavering commitment to delivering the best possible match every night. Their early singles clashes began to tell a story that fans couldn't help but invest in emotionally. On April 29, 1992, in Syracuse, New York, Michaels defended the WWF Intercontinental Championship against Hart in a non-title match, building anticipation for what fans hoped would be an eventual title showdown. That title match finally came on July 21, 1992, in Portland, Oregon, and it would prove to be groundbreaking in every sense of the word. Hart won the Intercontinental Championship from Michaels in what was billed as the first-ever ladder match in WWF history at SummerSlam 1992. This 20-minute bout was immediately recognized as extraordinary, earning a 5-star rating from Wrestling Observer newsletter, and perfectly symbolized their rivalry. Hart's technical precision and strategic approach versus Michaels' willingness to take incredible risks and push the limits of what was physically possible in the ring. Fans who witnessed it live or on pay-per-view knew they had seen something special, a match that would be studied and emulated for years. Their rivalry continued to intensify through 1992, culminating in another showcase at Survivor Series on November 25, where WWF champion Bret Hart defeated Intercontinental champion Shawn Michaels in a 26-minute technical masterclass that further cemented both men as top-tier talent in the company. Bret later described it as a dream match that earned mutual respect between the two competitors. Behind the scenes, however, cracks from earlier encounters were widening. Between 1993 and 1994, both men pursued divergent paths. Michaels faced real-life challenges, including a steroid suspension and a highly publicized bar fight in Syracuse that caused legitimate injuries and fueled rumors of him being unreliable, while Hart carried the company as WWF champion, holding the title for 248 days and working tirelessly to keep the struggling promotion afloat during one of its most challenging periods. Michaels captured the Intercontinental Championship multiple times during this period and engaged in his own legendary feuds, most notably with Razor Ramon in the iconic ladder matches at WrestleMania X in 1994. Their paths continued to cross sporadically, but the personal tensions were beginning in earnest. Michaels started spreading rumors about Hart's alleged affair with valet Sonny, which led to a very real and violent locker room brawl in 1995, where Hart pulled Michaels' hair and Michaels required stitches. Bret later described this incident as the start of their genuine hatred for one another. By 1995, Michaels had won the Royal Rumble, earning a WWF Championship shot against Diesel at WrestleMania, and although he lost that match, his main event push was now undeniable. Hart briefly reclaimed the Intercontinental Championship before setting his sights once again on the World Championship, and by this point, both men were clearly established as the two pillars of the WWF's New Generation era, even as the company struggled with steroid scandals and stiff competition from WCW. Then came 1996, the year that would produce both their greatest collaborative triumph and plant the seeds for their most devastating confrontation. In January 1996, Michaels won the Royal Rumble for the second time, earning the right to challenge for the WWF Championship at WrestleMania 12. The champion Michaels would face was Bret the Hitman Hart, who had reclaimed the WWF Championship in November 1995. The match booked for WrestleMania 12 would be unlike anything the WWF had attempted before, a 60-minute Iron Man match, where the wrestler with the most pinfalls or submissions at the end of the hour would be declared the winner and crowned champion. On March 31, 1996, at the Arrowhead Pond in Anaheim, California, WrestleMania 12 hosted this historic encounter. For 60 grueling minutes, Hart and Michaels delivered a masterclass in professional wrestling, telling a story of endurance, strategy, and willpower that captivated the live audience and the millions watching on pay-per-view worldwide. When regulation time expired, the score remained tied at 0-0, leaving the audience stunned and wondering what would happen next. WWF President Gorilla Monsoon then announced sudden death rules. The next pinfall or submission would determine the winner. In sudden death overtime, after a total of 62 minutes of competition, Michaels landed his devastating sweet chin music superkick and pinned Bret Hart to win his first WWF Championship. The moment was celebrated as the fulfillment of Michaels' boyhood dream, and his emotional ringside celebration with confetti raining from the rafters created one of WrestleMania's most iconic images. The match was voted Pro Wrestling Illustrated's Match of the Year and would later be recognized by WWE as the greatest WrestleMania match of all time, drawing 18.3 million viewers and showcasing the full range of both men's abilities, Hart's technical precision and resilience against Michaels' opportunistic brilliance. Yet Hart was frustrated by the loss, taking time off after WrestleMania, feeling burned out and disappointed that his championship run had ended in such a manner. During his absence, questions began to surface about whether the outcome had truly been the boyhood dream moment it was sold as, or whether backstage politics had influenced the decision. Michaels' subsequent title reign was tumultuous. He vacated the championship in February 1997, citing a knee injury, though rumors suggested he didn't want to lose the title back to Hart, further deepening the distrust between them. Hart reclaimed the WWF Championship for a fourth time in August 1996, but then lost it to Psycho Sid, adding to his frustration with the company's direction. At WrestleMania 13 in March 1997, Hart defeated Sid in a no-disqualification match to regain the title, though the bout was marred by interference from both Michaels and The Undertaker, intensifying the tension between him and Michaels. By mid-1997, the creative landscape had shifted dramatically. Hart turned heel, adopting an anti-American, Canadian nationalist persona and reforming the Hart Foundation alongside his brother Owen Hart, brothers-in-law British Bulldog and Jim, the Anvil Neidhart, and Brian Pillman. This new Hart Foundation became one of the most compelling acts in wrestling, heels in America, yet beloved heroes in Canada and around the world. Meanwhile, Michaels had joined forces with Triple H to form D-Generation X, one of the most influential factions in wrestling history. DX pushed boundaries, broke rules, and embodied the rebellious spirit of the coming Attitude Era with their crude humor and defiance. Michaels used his position in DX to mercilessly mock Hart on television, desecrating the Canadian flag and insulting Hart's family, particularly his elderly father, Stu. Hart publicly declared he would never lose the WWF Championship to Michaels in Canada, a statement that would prove prophetic in the worst possible way. The tension was escalating toward an event no one could have anticipated, one that would change not just their lives but the trajectory of professional wrestling for decades, the Screw Job and its eternal aftermath. On November 9, 1997, the Montreal Screw Job unfolded at Survivor Series in front of 18,000 stunned Canadian fans at the Molson Centre in Montreal, Quebec, and it remains the single most controversial, transformative, and emotionally devastating moment in wrestling history. To fully grasp what happened that night and why it resonates so profoundly, we must first understand the impossible situation that had developed in the weeks leading up to Survivor Series. The WWF was hemorrhaging money, losing the Monday Night Wars badly to WCW's Monday Nitro, and could no longer afford Bret Hart's landmark 20-year, $9 million contract signed just a year earlier in 1996. Vince McMahon, the company's owner, personally encouraged Hart to negotiate with WCW and accept their lucrative offer of $3 million per year. Hart, ever the loyal company man despite everything that had transpired, agreed to make the move, but he drew one firm, non-negotiable line. He would not lose the WWF Championship to Shawn Michaels in Canada. After months of Michaels' anti-Canadian promos, flag desecration, and personal insults toward his family, Hart felt that losing to Michaels in front of his own people would be the ultimate humiliation, one he could not and would not accept. He proposed several alternatives: dropping the title to anyone else anywhere else, vacating the championship on Raw the following night, or even losing to Michaels at a later date in the United States, but not in Montreal, not to Shawn, and not there. Vince McMahon, however, was consumed by a different fear, that Hart might appear on WCW Monday Nitro with the WWF Championship belt, repeating the infamous 1995 incident with Alundra Blayze, who had thrown the WWF Women's Championship into a trash can on live television, creating one of the most damaging PR disasters in company history. The thought of Bret Hart, the company's face for years, appearing on the competitions program with the WWF's most prestigious prize was unthinkable. So a secret plan was hatched. Vince McMahon conspired with Shawn Michaels, Triple H, referee Earl Hebner, and others, including Gerald Briscoe and Sergeant Slaughter, to forcibly take the championship from Hart without his knowledge or consent. The entire conspiracy was captured in real time by the documentary crew filming Hitman Hart, Wrestling with Shadows, providing an unprecedented behind-the-scenes look at the betrayal as it unfolded. The main event began, and for the first 19 minutes, Hart and Michaels delivered another masterful performance, with the crowd fully invested in seeing their Canadian hero retain his championship. Then came the moment that changed everything. Michaels reversed Hart's signature sharpshooter submission and applied it himself. Hart showed no signs of submitting. He was not tapping out, not verbally conceding, and was clearly working toward his planned escape, but referee Earl Hebner, following McMahon's orders, immediately rang the bell and declared Michaels the winner by submission. The broadcast cut to black. Michaels grabbed the championship belt and fled the ring immediately with DX members, while Hart, realizing in that instant what had been done to him, destroyed ringside monitors in rage and spat directly in Vince McMahon's face as the owner cowered at ringside, tracing the letters WCW in the air toward the hard camera. The Montreal crowd erupted not with typical wrestling excitement, but with genuine shock and fury, pelting the ring with garbage and chanting loudly. Backstage, chaos reigned. The Undertaker, uninformed of the plan despite his role as respected locker room leader, pounded on McMahon's locked office door, demanding the title be returned to Hart immediately. Years later, on Joe Rogan's podcast, Undertaker called it the worst night of his career and revealed he had threatened to leave the company if McMahon didn't rectify the situation. Mick Foley, one of Hart's closest friends, was so disgusted that he no-showed the next day's Raw taping in Cornwall, Ontario, and seriously considered leaving WWF entirely. Owen Hart, Bret's youngest brother, was in tears in the locker room, telling McMahon he intended to walk out with Bret, only staying because of his young family and contract obligations. The British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith, Hart's brother-in-law, was equally prepared to breach his contract and follow Bret to WCW that same night. Rick Rude, working for both WWF and WCW under a handshake agreement, was so offended by the betrayal that he shaved his beard, grew a mustache overnight to alter his appearance, and appeared on WCW Monday Nitro the very next week while Raw aired on tape a clear, unmistakable middle finger to Vince McMahon for anyone paying attention. The most immediate and violent response, however, came from Bret Hart himself. In the locker room, after the betrayal had fully sunk in, Hart confronted McMahon and punched him unconscious, leaving the owner with a black eye and a broken ankle. For Hart, the screw job wasn't just about losing a championship. It was about having his trust and loyalty to a company he had devoted 14 years of his life to weaponized against him in the most public and humiliating way imaginable. Hart debuted in WCW in December 1997 to massive ratings, but creative mismanagement prevented him from reaching the heights he had achieved in WWF. Then tragedy struck again at Starrcade 1999, when Hart suffered a career-ending concussion from an improperly executed thrust kick by Goldberg, forcing his retirement in October 2000. The post-concussion syndrome that followed was severe and debilitating. In June 2002, Hart suffered a catastrophic stroke that left the left side of his body temporarily paralyzed, with doctors warning he might never walk again. Hart has repeatedly stated in interviews that he believes the stress and depression from the screw job and his troubled WCW tenure directly contributed to both the stroke and his 2016 prostate cancer diagnosis. The emotional toll, combined with his divorce from wife Julie in 2002 after 18 years of marriage, left Hart a broken man, bitter, reclusive, and struggling with his identity after having wrestling ripped away in the worst possible way. For over 12 years, Hart refused to even say Shawn Michaels' name in interviews, referring to him only as that little bastard, that little, or the guy who stabbed me in the back. His hatred for Triple H, whom he holds equally responsible for orchestrating the screw job, remains unabated even in recent interviews. Shawn Michaels' life post-screw job was also tormented, though in different ways. He became the most hated man in Canada, requiring police protection whenever WWF toured Canadian cities for years and receiving legitimate death threats from fans who saw him as the villain in a real-life betrayal. The guilt, pressure, and years of drug and alcohol abuse plunged him into what he later called his darkest period. He held the WWF Championship until WrestleMania 14 in 1998, dropped it to Stone Cold Steve Austin in a match that symbolically passed the torch to the Attitude Era, and then delivered his infamous "Lost My Smile" promo on February 1998 Raw, vanishing from wrestling for 4 years. Many insiders believe Michaels simply couldn't handle being champion under the shadow of Montreal and used a legitimate back injury as an exit strategy. The most remarkable and healing moment in modern wrestling history came on January 4, 2010, during Raw's 15th anniversary celebration, when Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels stood face-to-face in the ring for the first time since 1997. Michaels delivered a tear-filled, genuine apology, and Hart, after 12 years of hatred and bitterness, accepted it. They shook hands, hugged, and the audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation, witnessing the seemingly impossible. Two men who had genuinely hated each other finding a path toward forgiveness. Hart later said, "I wish we never had that time between us." They even teamed together at WrestleMania XXVI in 2010, with Hart getting revenge on Vince McMahon in a match that offered some closure to the nightmare that began in Montreal. The industry impact of the Montreal Screw Job cannot be overstated. It directly birthed Vince McMahon's Mr. McMahon character, the evil authority figure that would define WWE programming for decades. The very next night on Raw, McMahon delivered his infamous "Bret Screwed Bret" promo, the first time fans saw the real Vince as a character rather than just an announcer. That single interview turned real-life heat into the hottest storyline imaginable and launched the Mr. McMahon vs. Stone Cold Steve Austin rivalry that ultimately shifted the momentum in the Monday Night Wars. Raw overtook Nitro in the ratings for good in April 1998 and never looked back, beginning an 82-week winning streak that literally saved the WWF from potential bankruptcy. The Montreal Screw Job rewrote every rule of sports entertainment: reality-based angles, breaking the fourth wall, controversial finishes. Its modern lineage traces directly back to that night. 28 years later, it remains the single most discussed moment in wrestling history, with every anniversary trending worldwide on social media. Their rivalry is celebrated as transformative, and Hart's 32 career championships alongside Michaels' 4 world title reigns and Grand Slam status embody 1990s wrestling excellence. Matches like WrestleMania X remain benchmarks that current wrestlers study and aspire to match, and the story of two friends turned enemies, who ultimately found peace, remains an eternal cornerstone of WWE lore.
Yeah, I have a good rapport with Shawn. We're pretty respectful of each other these days, and I feel good. I feel like that we're both guys that have moved to a different position and kind of are happier where we are than where we were.
But make no mistake, the scars from that night will never fully heal. Bret Hart lost the best years of his career to the screw job and its aftermath, while Shawn Michaels carries the guilt of his role in breaking another man's heart in front of the world. That night taught professional wrestling a harsh lesson. The most compelling stories aren't always scripted in creative meetings. They come from real human emotion, real betrayal, and consequences that can never be undone. The repercussions of Bret Hart's loss to Shawn Michaels in Montreal went far beyond a championship changing hands. They altered careers, destroyed relationships, reshaped an entire industry's creative direction, and left emotional wounds that 28 years later still haven't fully healed. It was more than just a match. It was the night professional wrestling changed forever. Thank you for watching, and if you want to see another fascinating story like this, click on one of the boxes on your screen now.